Metallica frontman James Hetfield spoke in an interview by Newsweek. James was asked about his favorite Metallica album. He said, "I like Ride the Lightning a lot because I think that was the first time we got to be a part of it. Kill 'Em All, obviously we recorded and wrote all the songs for it, and they were basically songs from the first couple of years we had been playing in the clubs. So we just went in and recorded them, but we weren't allowed to be in there for the mix or anything. With Ride the Lightning, there was no manager telling us, stay away from the studio. We were really integrated into it, and we were able to help with the sounds, help with the ideas and all that stuff." He also talked about some of his influences as a guitarist. He said, "So guitar influences for me, really percussive. As I mentioned earlier, I'd love to play drums too, you know? What I do is play drums on the guitar. I'm very rhythmic, and obviously I'm a rhythm guitar player, so there's some great rhythm guitar players out there, Malcolm Young of AC/DC obviously. Scorpions founding member Rudolf Schenker and I would say Johnny Ramone had just a great right hand, a lot of down picking, I just gravitated toward that. And obviously the musicality of a riff, somebody like a Tony Iommi, who is the ultimate riff master in my opinion, so a combination of heavy and great melodies within the riffs." What is your favorite Metallica album? Tell us in the comments below. Metallica guitarist Kirk Hammett took a defensive stance towards Lulu collaboration record, ranking it among the band's top quality efforts. As Hammett told The Verge, exploring the uncharted waters still comes as one of Metallica's top priorities, regardless of what the fans might think. "We're doing it for ourselves, man. Lulu is a really good example. I think that Lulu is some of the best stuff we've done. I mean the song Junior Dad moves me to tears, and working with Lou Reed was such a cool, unique, and special thing for us." However, the Axeman did agree that the album isn't exactly too approachable. "Maybe it's not for everyone, maybe it's a challenge for our fans, but for us, Lars, James, Rob, and myself, we love doing it and it was such a great experience. We look back at it very positively." Kirk already pointed out that fans aren't remotely close to anyone's mind during the Metallica creative process. This of course wasn't a jab at the listeners, but a way to stress how things work among the ranks of metal titans. During the rest of the chat, Hammett drew an interesting parallel between the way modern musicians make a living and how things worked in the music world a century ago. It's ironic in that with the advent of this technology, making a living as a musician has kind of gone backwards. You can't just make records and expect to sell them and live off that. If you really want to make a living making music, you have to go out there and play, and perform, which is just how it was 100 years ago. I'm sure there's still a lot of great art being made out there, but it's not the same. People don't rally behind it, there isn't a community behind it. How are people supposed to let other people really bond? How are people supposed to bond behind bands like they used to? It's just not there. It's all separate now, all in the name of convenience. That's just the way it is. Yngwie Malmsteen was asked to do a blind critique of some of the bands and guitar players of the time. Yngwie gets played Metallica's song Master of Puppets. He has great things to say about the band except for the guitarist, Kirk Hammett. This is what he said. "That's Metallica, I love it. This is maybe the second or third time I've heard this song, and the first time I've heard the live version. My old drummer and keyboardist liked Metallica a lot, and they played this song around the time I was recording Odyssey, 1988. I liked it then and I like it now. Of all the bands that play this type of music, Metallica is the best. James Hetfield sings better than all the other vocalists, and Lars Ulrich is a great drummer. I feel some sort of connection with them. I think the band heard some of my early demos, which sounded something like this." Malmsteen demos first surfaced on college radio stations in Northern California, where Metallica is based. "I'm not saying I influenced them, but maybe I did. Overall, the band has a great sound. But I think the lead guitar player, Kirk Hammett, is not very good. He can play fast and is pretty good at it. But his choice of notes and sense of pitch are very bad. I don't think that he plays with musicality, or plays in tune. Rather than lifting the song, his solo seems to be the anticlimax." Would you agree or disagree with Yngwie Malmsteen? What's your opinion on Kirk Hammett's guitar playing? Tell us in the comments section down below. Back in 2014, neoclassical guitar virtuoso Yngwie Malmsteen gave an interesting yet controversial opinion on Ibanez guitars. In an interview he was asked, what it was about the Stratocaster that has kept him so devoted to it all these years. He replied saying, Well, it's kind of the original instrument, everything else is a copy of it, you know. All the Ibanez and stuff like that's just a copy. It's like a bad copy, really. It's the same design but it's a bad copy. I'm an original, very purist kinda guy, he added, that's why I use Marshalls, Ferraris, whatever. I like the original stuff. He also said some interesting things about Gibson guitars. Yeah, Les Paul's nice being a piece of furniture, it's nice to look at. But it wouldn't survive 5 minutes with me on stage. What do you think about this? Are Ibanez guitars really bad copies of the original Fender Strat? And what do you think he is trying to say about Gibson? Comment your thoughts and opinions down below.
Neoclassical guitar master Yngwie Malmsteen goes through his top 5 tips for guitarists. 1. Learn from the best. Just like you, I had heroes as a kid. I got the first Deep Purple album and started figuring out how to do the whole Ritchie Blackmore thing. To be honest, I got pretty damn close. And then I soon realized he already exists, so I really should do something that sounds like me. It's a really good thing to emulate someone in order to learn your trade. I actually think it's very important. But eventually, you might want to go somewhere else with it, and that's up to each and every individual. 2. Knowledge is power. You're going to laugh at this, I only play with my ears. I don't think about technique or scales or anything. I just think about what I sound like. I grew up in a very musical family and I knew how important it was to know all the theory. You might think it's boring, but you have to learn the relationships between all the scales, keys and notes in order to know what you can and can't do. Say phrygian and diminished, they're all connected. A harmonic minor is also E phrygian dominant, but you could play diminished from F sharp every 3 frets and you'll bring that flavor. It all becomes hardwired and you soon stop thinking about it. 3. Open every door. When you play blues, you go into a certain mode, you know. The groundwork isn't actually that hard, it's all mathematical theory. You have the key to this door, and when you open it, there's a hallway with 100 other doors. Behind those doors are more doors, and it keeps going on. But you need the key to open that first door. Once you have that, you don't need to worry anymore. That's how you become an amazing improviser, and I feel that improvisation is one of the most important things to be a musician. All the great composers were great improvisers, they wrote it all down because they had to. That all comes down to knowing the theory. It's how you stay in the right place and never head anywhere you're not supposed to be. 4. Express yourself clearly. When I first came on this scene, way back when, people always used to say 2 things. Hey man, I can't believe you have no distortion on your guitar. And I have more gain on my shit than you could imagine, insane levels of it. I just make sure each note is clearly expressed. You do one, and then you move on to the next. Don't let them bleed into each other. The other thing people used to say is, you pick every note. I don't pick every note. If I did that, with the amount of gain I use, it would sound crazy. But it's not all legato either, there's no real system to it. I could pick every note if I wanted to, and sometimes do, if it's the sound I'm looking for. My solos sound like mini compositions. Some guitar players do repetitive things really fast, and I always felt that there should be a melody behind it, even if it's fast. People also used to say, wow, I can't believe how you wrote that solo. And I didn't write that solo, it was never written. Roll the tape, and off I go. It's completely improvised, even on the records. If there's a catchy phrase, sure I will use it, but more often than not, I play something a bit different. 5. Listen to the other instruments. I think since the late 50s, guitar players spend all their time in the bedroom listening to other guitar players. It went from Muddy Waters to Chuck Berry to Hank Marvin to Jimi Hendrix to Pete Townshend to Eddie Van Halen and so on. They were all fucking amazing. I love them, but they all had that in common with the exception of one, Alan Holdsworth, who took his lines from saxophones. I became infatuated with the classical violin, that ended up being my inspiration. It's a strange thing to say, because I've been on the road with Steve Vai and all those guys a few times. We've spent a lot of time together, and I've really gotten to know how they think, and they all have that in common, they love other guitar players. I'm not saying that's bad, I'm just saying it's something I see more often than not. You may run the risk of having slightly less identity, but I wouldn't want to knock anyone for that. I understand how it feels, When I was a kid, I wanted to be like Blackmore because he was cool, but it's important for me to feel like I'm doing my own thing. Yngwie Malmsteen discussed his guitar pickup preference with Amit Sharma, saying, "Single coils have this magnetic window that's more direct and precise. It reminds me of a Paganini Vivaldi violin sort of sound. It starts pure and ends pure. It gives your hands much more of a factor in this sound, how you pitch the notes, bend them and so on. If you suck, you're gonna suck real bad, and if you play well, it's going to sound really good. Using double coil pickups kills a lot of the guitar tone, you lose the acoustic mechanics. With my single coils driven through the Marshalls and overdrive, it sounds massive." Focusing on gear in general, Yngwie noted, "I've used Fender Strats with Marshalls since forever. Since I last played London, I've switched to my YJM Seymour Duncan pickups, and I also have a Fender YJM overdrive pedal, which is fairly new. It's all based on what I've loved before, nothing is new. When it comes to guitar gear, I am pretty set in my ways. I've been playing for eons now, but way back I remember Eddie Van Halen came out, and I loved his playing, he was amazing. But then everyone started copying his guitars with Floyd's, and I didn't." In an archived 1985 interview that's been made public online, guitar virtuoso Yngwie Malmsteen shared his detest towards metal music, calling it all sorts of nasty names. The chat is indeed an old one, but it offers an interesting insight on 22-year-old edgy Yngwie. Yngwie Malmsteen told interviewer Steve Newton, "As far as I'm concerned, heavy metal is a very primitive, and in my opinion not very necessary form of music that could be extinct, as far as I'm concerned. I really detest it. It's disgusting, and it's really boring, and it's very low, and it's totally free from any intelligence or logic or emotions. It's all crap, and it's for little frustrated pre-puberty kids. And I'm really fed up with it." Why do you think Yngwie Malmsteen had such a strong hate for metal music back then? Tell us your thoughts in the comments below. In other more up-to-date news, Richie Blackmore recently shared his thoughts on Yngwie Malmsteen, saying great things. "I know him, and he's a very nice guy. Excellent guitar player. A lot of people have kind of questioned his angle, but he obviously knows his stuff. He might be a bit too tall, but that's my only criticism. I did meet his mother in Sweden, a very nice woman who reminded me of my mother back in England. So Yngwie and I get on fine. He's like a family member. I definitely think he's probably the best at what he does and, for what it's worth, the fastest. And he doesn't play the typical blues, minor kind of interpretations. He knows his scales. It's more interesting." Discussing the importance of rhythm guitar, Slayer guitarist Kerry King shared his thoughts on shredders, saying that their music tends to easily bore him as repetitive. He tells Total Guitar, "I think a lot of the shredder-type players, and I don't mean everybody, they're not very good songwriters. Players like Fire Malmsteen spend their time perfecting what they do only as far as leads. Yngwie had a run where he did some good songs, but when it became just about how many notes he can fit in a millisecond." King added, "Don't get me wrong, he's an amazing player, but after 3 songs, I'm done. He'll just keep doing it faster on a different string. Rhythm guitar is where a song is constructed. If there's a song you like, it's because of that rhythm guitar. The lead stuff at the end of the day is just the icing." During the rest of the chat, King discussed hanging out with friends who aren't into metal, explaining how he still likes goofing around with guitar. "When people come over and want to listen to music most people like, say Michael Jackson or something, I'll go pick up the guitar and learn the one Eddie Van Halen played on. I'll do stupid shit like that," he said. "There's this song called Push It, which got used in commercials, and I think it's funny to put that on when friends are over, pick up a guitar and play along. Everyone in the house just dies laughing. For clarity, you can turn that into a metal song."